Friends, when I picked the sermon title of Transforming Turmoil, I would have no idea that the campaign that has been filled with turmoil became shocking and violent with an attempted assassination of a presidential candidate. Like everyone, I'm relieved and grateful that it was only a flesh wound. And my prayer is that we can come together at last to begin to address gun violence in this country. I'm also grateful to be allowed to address you this morning to share something of my faith, something about how I think there are ways we can work through all of the turmoil which can surround us. And I want to tell you at the beginning, I don't have answers. I have observations. And if you were expecting a slew of answers, I remind you you're free to leave and just use the door that doesn't rattle the camera. Methodist Bishop Calvin McConnell tells a story about a king who asked an artist to paint a painting that would give an idea of peace. And this king was tired of war. He was tired of squabbling subjects and discontented people and all their complaints. So the idea he had was that if there was a painting of peace, he could contemplate that painting when he was tired of governing. So an artist accepted the assignment, went off, created a painting and brought it back. And it was a beautiful pastoral scene with fluffy clouds, trees where you might actually believe you could hear the wind rustling, and there were flowers and a flowing stream. And the king looked at it, drew his sword and slashed that painting up and said to the artist, "If you can't do better than that, you will suffer the same fate as this painting. Go away and come back with something better." Weeks later, the artist returned with another painting. This time, it was a raging storm, dark clouds, rain pelting the ground, branches sagging under the weight of the water, and that stream had become a raging body of water about to overflow its banks, and all those beautiful flowers were matted to the ground. And yet, in a corner of the painting, coming through the cloud, was a shaft of light illuminating a single bird singing in a tree. The king looked at it for a while and said, "The ability to sing in the midst of a storm," and nodded. Surely that was peace. The king was in awe, hung the painting in his private chambers, and then, most importantly, paid that artist for the work. So I got this story from a church newsletter from the church I grew up in Miami. The minister went on to write, "There has seldom been a time when we were so insecure about the future, so questioning about whether we will be in control or whether we'll even like it. We feel edgy. We're quick to flare up, easily offended. We're feeling frayed and more than a little insecure." When was this published, this church newsletter from Miami? May 19th, 1981, 43 years ago. So that's my first observation. Our times of turmoil may feel new and different to us, but this turmoil is a feature of our complicated life these days. And here's my second observation. So maybe we can't transform the turmoil. Maybe what we can do is transform our response to the turmoil. Now, as human beings, we are hardwired to pay attention to bad news. And it's left as our brains evolved from a time of being tribes that were out there hunting and gathering, and you needed to know what was happening outside the hut or the cave or on the hillside, because that might mean the difference between life and death. Except now we get bad news from all over the world, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and we are hardwired to pay attention to that news over any other kind. So that's my third observation. We do end up feeling overwhelmed, sometimes depressed, sometimes hopeless, sometimes profoundly discouraged by this cycle of negativity. Now, I haven't said anything that qualifies as news as part of this sermon. What I'd like to share with you now is some ideas about ways you can get through the negativity. There are a slew of practices that can help. And I want to remind everyone that Jesus needed to recover from Jesus's ministry. There are lots of stories where he told people, I have to go rest, I need to go in the desert to pray. Shoot, maybe if there'd been a spa, Jesus would have taken a spa day as well. He certainly earned it. One of the practices that can help is yoga. You may remember Reverend Anna ran a yoga class at church. We used Bible verses that we repeated to accompany our stretching. Now, as Christians, we've got a slew of practices: prayer, meditation, contemplation, chanting. We can walk through mazes, and there's mindfulness, and there's gratitude. Basically, the idea is you do what has a positive effect on you. One of the newest practices I've been reading about is called forest bathing. Have you heard of it? Yeah. Have you tried it? All right. Yay, one person. Forest bathing is immersing yourself in nature and then doing exercises that use all of your senses. And scientists have measured benefits that include a reduction in your stress hormones, lowered blood pressure, strengthened cardiovascular systems. But maybe you can't make it all the way to the forest. All right, try looking, and I mean really looking, at the environment right outside the door of this church. Rest on the benches and see what's been planted. There are colors, textures, sizes, shapes, things that you can feel with your hands. Take a few minutes and give thanks for the beauty and all those who maintain it. Creating that beauty at UCC is a group endeavor, which brings me to my fourth observation. Working together on a project for good makes us feel better individually. Church projects that you help with offer the additional benefit of spending time with your Christian family. The gratitude practice appeals to me. It's especially useful if I'm tempted to feel sorry for myself because of a medical diagnosis or an adult child who won't respond to multiple messages. When I take time to record the good things and the good people who are still part of my story, who are still part of your story, even when the bad stuff occurs, it's a powerful exercise. Now, for me, my daily good stuff is things as small as the smell of the coffee in the morning or the springy feel of the Boston fern as I water plants outside on the porch. I've got texts from my sisters who love sending funny cat photos. And I try to remember We are not alone in life. And this is my fifth observation. I try to be thankful no matter what I'm facing. And I encourage you to do the same. There's something about gratitude that elevates us from the bondage of the difficulties of life. Some time ago, I read a New York Times article about a practice that reminded me of something I did with my children. For our last bedtime ritual, and you know with kids, there's a lot of them. There's the story, there's the last glass of water. For our last element of that ritual, I asked, what was the best thing that happened to you today? And I hoped it would help my sons to have pleasant dreams if their last conscious thought was about something that brought them happiness. So in this practice, you write down each day as many things as you can that you think you appreciate about yourself. It might be how you handled an unfair and critical comment about you that someone shared in public, or that you resisted the temptation to snap back at a cranky family member or coworker. Honestly, I have days where I don't have much to work with when it comes time to record what I appreciate myself. You know, it comes down to, well, I made my bed and at least I didn't monopolize the conversation in book group. And I know that sounds a little sad, doesn't it? Do you remember Stuart Smalley's affirmations on Saturday Night Live? I'm good enough, I'm smart enough, and darn it, people like me. But hear me out. The idea of an appreciation practice is about oneself, but it's a good counterbalance to our human tendency to focus on what we did that was wrong or what we could have done better. And if you look at the patterns that emerge from an appreciation journal, you can begin to see the positive effects that you have on others as well as yourself. And honestly, when I know I'm going to have to record my day's deeds, it inspires me to take an extra step, a little more care. I want to have something good to write down. And that encouragement is an important thing. And that's my sixth observation. Be a witness of Jesus Christ to those around you. Jesus said, those who believe in him are the light and the salt, especially in this darkened world. Be good, do good. Members of our congregation are working on strengthening our approach to sustainability. And one of our activities is to improve our habitat. In order to attract bees, we're planting special bee attractors, letting the grass grow a little longer, a little higher. It's called edge habitat on our property, where human ecosystems bump into wild ones. And that edge habitat, according to ecologists, is especially fertile. It attracts and nourishes all kinds of wildlife. What if we were to cultivate edge habitat in our hearts, to keep soft boundaries, to leave the outer edge fruitful, and let those who are poor in spirit, those who are alienated from community, rest there and feel nourished? God can take a scanty harvest and make it an ample Eden with our willingness. So here's my seventh observation. Growth, change, peace. Our faith makes all of this possible. Or in the words of Corrie ten Boom, a Dutch Christian imprisoned in Ravensbrück concentration camp for helping Jewish escapees from the Holocaust. A religion that is small enough for our understanding would not be big enough for our needs. We have questions, we have anger, we have pain, we have regret. All of these require answers, which I believe come from the solace of our belief in God and Jesus. Thomas More once wrote, "Earth has no sorrow heaven cannot heal." Now, I can't determine the time needed for those in turmoil to find healing. Anyone who preaches simply paves the way for the prayer of faith that lays everything bare before eternal love. And that's the purpose of the sermon. In case you didn't catch that when you were in seminary, the order of worship is that the sermon leads you to the time of prayer, because it is in prayer that the spiritual answers are made known. The gospel author advises us, do not let your hearts be troubled and do not be afraid. God's love, forgiveness, strength, and compassion can emerge in our hearts to transform turmoil into love. And I say, amen, my friends, amen.